Hi, Nick Vitzi with Bradley Technical Service. Today we're going to go through the process of changing a sensor out on a Verge faucet. On our test stand here I have a Crest model. This process also applies to the Metro and Linnea series, but please be aware that if you have a Zen faucet, the process is the same, but the actual act of changing the sensor can be much more difficult and is not recommended. Tools required for this job will be a Phillips screwdriver, at least one but preferably two small flathead screwdrivers, a wire cutter, some electrical tape, and a 1/16 inch Allen wrench. While you may wish to remove the entire spout from the fixture, I prefer to leave it in place as I find it faster and easier. To begin, the first thing you want to do is disconnect your water supply and make sure it is turned off. You will need access to the faucet control box. Once the cover is off, disconnect power from the system. Verge faucets may have both a battery connector and a wall power connector. Disconnect any that are present. Then disconnect the sensor cable from the timer module. The sensor cable will feed out backwards through the box through the small hole in the lower corner. With the sensor disconnected from the timer module, we can now remove the sensor from the spout itself. Begin by removing this screw from the front of the sensor using the 1/16 inch Allen wrench. In order to actually extract the sensor, we'll need to pry it separate from the pod body. Do this using the two small screwdrivers, prying from the side. Attempt not to damage the finish on the spout, but since the sensor is damaged, scratching that won't cause any problems. You may find it easier to go in at the tip of the sensor where the screw was located. Once you have the sensor partway out, you should be able to slightly lower the entire pod body and slide the system forward. There's a tab at the back of the pod that is locked into the casting that is preventing the entire system from being removed while the sensor is in place. Once the sensor pod is out, apply a small amount of pressure on the tab at the back center of the sensor, and you can pop it free of the housing. Now that we have the sensor freed up from the spout, we can get our replacement sensor ready to go. Our replacement sensor kit will come with a new sensor, along with a printed version of these instructions, and new shank gaskets if those are needed. With our sensor ready to go, we're going to cut the old sensor free and use the cable as a fish line to help pull the new sensor through. Note that I have not disconnected the water line below the spout. This is to prevent accidentally pulling this up and through the fixture, making the situation much more difficult to fix. With the remaining cable here, we are going to take our new sensor end and protect the barb by hiding it behind that cable. Use electrical tape to snake these two together. With the new sensor wrapped to the cable, begin feeding it through the entire system. The cable may get hung up on the top of the shank, and you may have to stop and pull backward slightly to try and reposition everything. Once the new sensor cable is pulled through, you can remove the electrical tape. discard what's left of the old sensor cable. Push the new sensor housing into place in the faucet pod. You'll need to leave the sensor partially pulled down like this to perform the reverse of the steps we did earlier to get these tabs to engage at the back of the spout. Once the pod is all the way back, you can push the sensor up into position and replace the screw. With the sensor reconnected, you can feed the cable back through the faucet control box. And reconnect it to the timer module. You can reconnect power at this point. Note that if battery power is being used, it must be connected to the socket on the right side of the timer module. It will physically fit on the left side, but this will result in draining the batteries very quickly. At this point, you can turn the water back on and test the fixture. If you had any problems fishing the new sensor wire through the spout, or if your cable snapped off, you may need to remove the spout from the deck in order to actually complete this process. The kit does include replacement gaskets in case this step is necessary. With the spout removed from the deck and the old gasket peeled away, you'll be able to see the web inside the casting that the sensor is probably hung up on. From here, you should be able to feed the cable down through the shank.